Hi everybody, good morning, no, good afternoon. It's Jean here. It's Thursday. I've just finished making my block for our block party number 14. 14 weeks, that's unreal. I have to tell you, this is my favorite block. I just love this block. I think it's so pretty. We're learning a new technique this week. Quarter square triangles. We've done half square triangles to death. You know them. You can do them in your sleep. This method is quarter square triangles. It might look like a lock, but it's not. Basic 9 patch, but this is our block. So isn't that delightful? I think this is so pretty. 4 fabrics. I use my background, which this week is my bright white. The corners and the square in the middle, the diamond in the middle is one fabric. The star is another fabric. And then a little tiny bit of, I use a stripe. Or you could just border your star however. This is the unit we're talking about, a quarter square triangle. Looks like a lot of pieces. The construction method is easy. It's basically one step further than your half square triangles. Very simple. You have to piece, you have to pin, but again, basic 9 patch, which we've done, nice and you press along the way, set your seams, press along the way, and look at this. I did have to trim it off slightly. The one bottom was just a hair, but it's 12.5 inches. Pretty good, 12.5 inches. So again, I used my quarter-inch seam. You might want to err on just a scant quarter. Again, a scant quarter is because there's quite a lot of seams. But I used my quarter-inch seam. Somebody had said, stop apologizing. And I'm going to stop apologizing. But I'm sorry. I screwed up one of these, which one did I screw up? Oh, I messed up one of these because I wasn't, and I show you in the video, I wasn't precise in marking. Remember when we either mark or we iron the stitch and the flip, the mark, stitch, and flip unit, which is this one. I was off maybe an 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch, but it made a difference in the finished block. So just be real careful whether you are going to be ironing your markings or whether you mark, whichever you're comfortable with now that you've been doing this. But I'm thrilled. My block number 14. So I'll put my thinking cap on for the rest of the blocks. I'll peruse some of my magazines that I have. I just love it. I just love this block. I think it's delightful. I think it makes it interesting with these little corners. Again, not hard. You've done every method that is in this block except for the quarter square triangles. So if you're not beginners, you know how to do it. But if you are beginners, let me know how you got on with it, because it's a real pretty star. I really love it. Wanted to say something else. What was that? No. I forget what I wanted to say. No, I forget what I was going to say. I have been actually working on nothing to do with the block party. I've been working on another quilt that I'm not quite finished yet. I'm going to, and I've just been in my sewing room. I was saying I didn't get dressed up or anything. I just set up my camera and I showed you my daily. I'm not going to apologize. My daily thing, what I do making this quilt, a simple quilt using a jelly roll. As you know, I don't love jelly rolls, but the quilt's turning out real nice. So but that's going to be the next few episodes because it's long. It's an hour and a half long or something. By the time I stitch it all together, splice it all together with my editing, stitch it all together. Yeah, so that's going to be the next few episodes, part 1, part 2, and probably part 3 of my quilt. But anyway, that's not our block party. This is our block party, block party 14. I think it's delightful, and I hope you do too. So send me your block, see how you get on with it. 4 fabrics, some contrast, figure it out on your own. where you want your background or if you want your star to recede or pop. This is sort of a medium tone fabric. We've had last week's was heavier. We've had some very light looking blocks visually. This is sort of medium. So I was delighted making this. I love it. So I hope you too, folks. Thanks a lot. See ya. Bye. So block number 14. Here we are. Cutting instructions. You've already seen the block. It looks like a lot, but I haven't made the block yet. I don't think it's going to be too hard for you. Just a few bits to keep in track of, but not large ones. So here are our cutting instructions. Hopefully you have a mental picture or a picture of the block in front of you. We use, as I was saying, we use 4 different fabrics for the block. And this is our cutting instructions. I have used my tone-on-tone background fabric that I have pulled, my actual white for myself. So what we need to start with our background fabric is 4 2.5-inch squares. Then you need 2 5 1/4-inch squares. Then you'll need to cut 4 4.5-inch squares. That's of the background, whatever color you're using. Then for our center square and our corner triangles, because it's sort of a snowball block, we're making the corner triangles, and the large center square, which ends up sort of a diamond shape, you're going to need 1 4.5-inch square, which will be set as a diamond. Then you're going to be needing, for the corners, 4 2.5-inch squares. I actually fussy cut them. I have too much time on my hands. I'll see how that turns out, because they're just going to be cut in half. Then for our actual star, you're going to need 2 5 1/4-inch pieces. There's 2 of them there. And then I used, for a little bit of oomph, because I've been wanting to use it, I hope it'll turn out, the stripe sort of bordering the star. I used 4 2.5, let me get that so you can see it, 4 2.5-inch pieces. So this is our cutting instruction. Oh, I just wanted to show you something. Let me reach around here and get it. This is a, I forget what it is. Is this a motor? I'm not quite sure who it is. But look, on the selvage, I don't know if you can see that. I cut that off and it was so sweet. You do not find the happy life, you make it. Isn't that sweet? Oh yeah, that's right. It's called Handmade by Moda. Yeah, you do not find the happy life, you make it. Isn't that true? We could all be so flippin' miserable because life is hard. But we have to be happy and smile through it. So, make happy life, make lots of squares, and make a pretty quilt block. That's what we're going to do. Block number 14. We're going to be happy, folks. We're going to be happy making this block. I got to make it now. Oh, geez. Okay, I'm going to start. The first unit we're going to make in our block is the square within a square. And that means we're going to be using our 1 4.5-inch square and 4 of our 2.5-inch backgrounds. Now this, what we're going to be doing is this method. I'm going to be doing the press, stitch, and flip method. And if you're not familiar with that, it's my tone on tone, where I'm going to go over to my ironing board and I'm going to iron these in half diagonally and get a nice creased line. You can either do that, or with a marker, you can make a ruler, take a ruler and mark from corner to corner. The reason we're going to do that is we're then going to open up this unit here that has been marked, and on each corner, well, on 2 corners, the pretty sides together, you're going to stitch this corner from that corner to there, and having marked it, the opposite corner, stitch from there to there, right on that marked line, or just slightly one thread inside to the corner, just so it, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to be folding that over. We're going to be folding this one over. And then you're going to trim that. And then we're going to do the opposite corners, but I'm going to go over and I'm going to show you what we're going to do. So I've gone over to my ironing board and I've pressed my units, my 4.5 inch units, in half diagonally, just to create for me a creased line. Now, what I'm going to do is on one corner, I'm going to place this. You have to be very careful to get the orientation correct. You're wanting to do the creased line from the center of the block out to the other center of the block. If you need to pin it on the edges, you can. This is the right sides together. And we're just doing, this is called the stitch and flip method. I'm just putting my needle just on the line, but maybe just a thread, just to allow enough for this unit to turn over, as we do it with our snowball blocks. So I'm just going to stitch that right like that, and right off. And then I'll trim that, about 1/4 inch. Just use my scissors. And we're going to do the exact same thing on the opposite side. So I take my pressed unit, right sides together, center of the block to center of the block, because if you do it that way, you're going to get all confused. So just be careful your orientation of your little corner units. This is an easy block. This is an easy unit to make. Make sure it's all nice and squared up. And then I'll trim that one at 1/4 inch. You can eyeball it. Oops, by all means, if you need to take it over to your rotary cutter and do that. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing. Right sides together, and what you want is them to overlap. If you've done it exactly 1/4 inch, precisely, this little unit here is going to go over that white unit there and this white unit there that you've just stitched, because we want 1/4 inch. So when we go to sew it onto our next block, we have that 1/4 inch. But you have to make sure that these have been pushed outwards in order to do that 1/4 inch. And there we have our 1/4 inch. Just frayed a little bit. And I'm going to just cut that off. That one's a little bit. Oh, that didn't turn out as well as I wanted it to. I might have to do that one again. I didn't realize that. Yeah, that one didn't turn out. But these three turned out. I'll probably take that off and redo that because it's just slightly off. I didn't realize what I did. But this is the look that you want. You want this little 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. I'm going to have to take that off because it's slightly off. But so do as I say, not as I do. Because I need that 1/4 inch. Because you see that mistake I made when I go to sew that, I would just not cut my point off, but I wouldn't have any seam allowance there. So I'm going to take this one off and just be very, very careful. Maybe even cut another one and just do it a little bit better. I don't know what happened there, but there you go. So I'm gonna take this one off and press it, and there's my square in a square unit. So I corrected myself, I corrected my mistake, and I actually cut another piece. I don't know what happened there, but now I'm very pleased. I have my quarter inch, and my block measures exactly 4.5 inches square. So when we sew it, we have our points. And if you've lost your points, whatever. So now what we're going to be doing, that's our one unit. Now we're going to be doing our outside block, our outside units with this fabric and my stripe, which is bordering the star. So what we are going to do, almost the exact same principle, a press, flip and stitch, or a mark, flip and stitch and flip. We're going to take our 4.5 inch background, and then each one of our 4 2.5 inch squares, and we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to take over to the ironing board, and you're going to iron all of your pieces in half, or you're going to mark them diagonal to diagonal. And we're going to do the exact same method on this block here, on this unit. We're going to put a stripe or whatever your fabric on one corner, and then your other fabric on the opposite corner, and that is the unit that we're making. So we're going to be making 4 of these total. Excuse me, total. I'm going to mark all 8 of these units here, and then I'm going to stitch them just as we did that one. Find the center of your block to the center of your block with your diagonal and stitch them right along, one each on opposite corners of this block. So again, for this unit, we're going to be doing the exact same method that we just did for our square and square, just on 2 corners though. So I'm taking my 4.5 inch squares of my background. Find the correct, yeah, this is the correct one. And then, if any of you, as you know, I've been very hesitant to use my stripes because I don't want them to go all over the place. But I figured I'd cut them exactly the same, stripe wise, and what I've just done is I've ironed them exactly the same. So like my stripes now are going this way, but like if I had done it that way, they would have been going across. I don't know how it'll turn out, but I think I like the look, hopefully, of the stripes going inside. I don't know how it'll turn out, but I think it'll be good because they're all the same. The exact same thing I did with this. I fussy cut these, if you remember. It was the pattern. I fussy cut them, but we're only going to be seeing half. So each block will look exactly like that. And then they're just turned one like that, one like that. So I'm pleased with the way my orientation is on my fabric cutting. Again, the exact same way. I've ironed my marking. You could by all means mark it. Put my presser foot down and stitch one hair to the right of that line, just so it folds over. Go slow if you need to pin your unit, by all means. Again, of course, right sides together. And then trim your 1/4 inch seam. And then we come, and I'll do this corner, opposite corner. Find the inside to the inside with your marking. Match it up. My thread got messed up. Anyway, I don't know what happened there. My thread got messed up. I have to rethread my machine. Anyway, I'll rethread my machine, and then I'll just finish up these 4 units. I'm finishing up my units here. And if you're just tuning in, I've done this before. when you stitch this unit here, this flip and stitch method, some people say, oh, well, there's a waste. You're wasting all those triangles that you're cutting off, because I'll just cut this off, right? Well, remember the way I was saying it before. What you would want to do is, after you've stitched that line, if you want to save this, you come about 1/2 inch, because you're going to cut it 1/4 inch. So you do your stitching about 1/2 inch away, another line of stitching before you cut this piece off. You do another line of stitching, and then when you go to trim off your 1/4 inch, between that stitching line, you have our lovely unit there, but then you end up, remember, with another little perfect half square triangle. So a lot of people do that so that they don't waste this, and then they can use these in borders or I don't know. What would you use that for? Tiny little units. Oh, maybe you could do block 11. That's already made up, right? 1.5, about, what is it, about 1.5? Oh, that's about 2 inch. 2-inch squares. 2-inch squares. Put a bunch of 2-inch squares together. Anyway, that's that. I'm going to finish up. I'm going to press them, and we'll go on to the next step. We have our center unit and our corner units here, all the same. Now, since forever, we've been perfecting half square triangles, right? But this week, we're going to be making the unit, which comprises this, quote, the star, where it's going to be called it's called a quarter half square, no, a quarter, wait a second, it's a quarter square triangle. Quarter square triangle, yeah. It has the 4 pieces in it instead of the 2. I'll show you how to do it. We're using the remaining 2 5.5 inch of each fabric here, 5.25 inch squares. And again, what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be making half square triangles, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to my ironing board, as I've acknowledged, because I went back and saw my mistake. I had been a little bit careless, as I had just put up on the video about this creased line. So my unit over there was off slightly. That's why I didn't get the 1/4 inch. Very, very, very important. If you are going to be ironing it, make sure it's completely diagonal to diagonal, because that's where I messed up. And I lost that little bit there. Very, very important. Very important. So by all means, if you want to mark exactly diagonal to diagonal, just be very, 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 very careful in your ironing. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go over and find on these units here on my white, on my background. Oh, flippin' heck, excuse me. Oh. And I'm in the middle of something, okay? Hold on. Sorry. My husband can wait. Sewing. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to find my center, and then what we're going to do is right sides together. We've done it a million times. 1/4 inch seam on either side of my unit there, of my seam, and then we're going to cut it apart and make a 4 half square triangles. So for those of you who are just joining in, we are creating a half square triangle unit. And what I've done, I'm very, very, very careful. I've been very careful to press or to mark my background fabric, as it were, here. And I'm just putting right sides together. This is the first step to making our 1/4 square triangle units, they're called. So on either side of that line, 1/4 inch, my 1/4 inch foot is just riding along that line right there. By all means, pin it. I'm going to stitch down 1/4 inch right along that diagonal. Now, what I do is I'll leave my needle down, and I'll just bring my presser foot up, and I'll just turn this around, and I'll just pull my stitches, my thread just a little bit, and then I'll go right back down put my presser foot down and put the presser foot side right on that crease, my marked edge, and then I can just come back my 1/4 of an inch. You don't have to pull your stitches out, your fabric out, and cut your stitches all the time. Right off, and now I can just cut my stitches. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut, to create my half square triangles, I'm going to cut on that line. Be very, very careful. Cut right on your marked line, right on your press line, right there. These are our half square triangles. I'm going to cut right on that line. Not near the stitching, 1/4 inch away from the stitching. And there are our half square triangle units. Now I'm going to go press these over to the dark. Now you have to be careful, but this is on the bias, so just be careful. You're going to set your seams and you're going to press them. But what we're going to end up with doing is we're going to then put these together, this unit together, 2 half square triangles, and then we're going to do exactly the same way. We're going to find our center here, perhaps marking it or pressing it, and stitch a 1/4 inch along. But I'm just going to go over to my ironing board, and I'm not going to trim these up yet. I'm just going to press my seams over to the dark. So I've pressed my units, I've set my seam and pressed my seams up to the dark side on 2 of them, and done the same with that. But then on these 2, now I've created my creased marking line. Now by all means, if you want to, go and mark this diagonal. By all means, what you're going to do is you're going to fold your unit in half, and you're going to find that line on 2 of them. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put opposite sides. I'm going to put my red onto my white and my white onto my red square. And that nested line, that line right there, because we've pressed right over to the dark side. You might want to pin this. That line, that nests right up beautifully. So you just might want to pin that there. Now, where are my pins? Let me just go get my pins. So I'm going to be stitching again just a 1/4 inch along next to that marked line, but I want to next to the crease line or the marked line. But you want to make sure your units just nest real nice there, however you want to pin them, so that you can feel it. They don't shift corner to corner. Right there. And this is the unit to get 1/4 square triangles. Right there. Hopefully this will work. So I'm starting my stitching a 1/4 inch away from my creased or marked line. Let me just put these under. And I'm creating this exactly, presser foot riding on that line, creating these exactly like my half square triangles. These are called 1/4 square triangle units. Again, my needle down, I'm just going to lift it up, just pull it out gently to get a little bit of thread behind you. Put my presser foot down, eyeball that up, 1/4 of an inch away from that line. Go slowly, right off. And then I'll remove my pins. And then hopefully, take them off, hopefully find my marked creased line. And cut right on the line. And then hopefully, what are we going to have here? Perfect 1/4 square triangle units. Perfect 1/4 square triangle units. Now, On all of our squares, we're going to square them up. Remember how I was telling you how we square up our units. We want all of these units, I believe it's 4.5 inches square, exactly. So we're going to go over, we're going to trim the dog ears, and we're going to trim these up when I finish them to 4.5 inches. So I'm just going to finish this one up here. My red over to the white, opposites to make that beautiful unit there. And to press, set the seam and wherever the fabric wants to go, because it's light to dark, dark to light, so it doesn't matter. So just press, set your seam really good, and then roll up, and then you have a perfect quarter square unit. So I'm just squaring up all of my units. We've done this before, but what you do is we want perfect 4.5 inch squares. They're pretty good. You find your 4.5 inch and your 4.5 inch on your rule, and when you have this lovely diagonal line, you can see that that line sits right there on that seam right there, and it's just a little bit, it's just a slice on that side, and at that time you're taking your dog ears off, and then you turn it around and you find your 4.5 inch and 4.5 inch, and again it's just a slice, just a sliver that you want to get rid of, and then you have perfect 4.5. So I'm just going to finish this up, and then we'll put our block together. So now it's time to put our blocks together. Our block together. So we have our units, and what is it again? It's a 9 patch, but it's an interesting 9 patch. It has quite a few pieces, but it wasn't all that hard. So what we do is we start putting it together. I know my stripes go in the corners here. See if that's in the, let me just move that up there. Like that. Is that, yeah. My corners, my stripes. And then you have to be careful with your star configuration. This one goes like that. The bottom one goes with the stars out. And then the two sides go up and down. Oh, look, 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 look. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Oh, it's so pretty. I say that. I'm like a broken record. Oh, it's so pretty. I'm so thrilled. But look. It's so pretty. I'm so thrilled. I could have fussy cut that. Yeah, that'll annoys me. It's okay. Don't fussy cut it, because it's a diamond. I forgot. Well, it was screwed up as a square also. Never mind. It looks good. I like it. There's my block. So now so now what are we going to do? Simple 9 patch. You've done this. You're going to do it row by row. Over to the center, over to the center. Do them all that way, 1/4 inch seams. And look, what are we only going to be matching again this week? You're only going to be matching these 1, 2, 3, 4 seams up to make sure that point's really nice. You're going to be careful of this 1/4 inch here. That's what you have to be careful of. And your 1/4 inch will form on these points. But yeah, so I'm going to go over and I'm going to construct my star. Yeah, it's really pretty. This may be one of my favorite blocks. I really, really love this. So I'm just going to go over and do my star. So I've stitched my 9 patch 3 rows together, and as usual, we've done this a whole bunch of times. I've my left to my right, my left to my center, my right to my center, and stitch this seam. And then what I've done is I've pressed this seam, I've set it, and I've pressed it to the outside, going that way. The center seam I pressed in, and this seam I've pressed out. And that way we can just, at these points here, where you have your 1/4 inch, your 1/4 inch, your 1/4 inch, you can just nest them, pin them together. And then how beautifully that nests right together. Be careful of this center seam here, of this center point here, because you don't want to cut off your square, or your diamond in your square. So pin that very carefully, and then pin this one. So you do that one to the center, top to the center, and then you're going to do your bottom to your center, and then your block will be done. So there you go. Block number 14. I really like this. Oh, hold up, just a sec. Hold on, let me see. I should have done this before. I may not be so pleased. Let me see my 12.5-inch ruler. Oh. It's okay there. There's slightly, oh mate, what happened there? Just slightly big there. I'll just cut that off. Let me just see. 12.5. Yeah, there you go. 12.5 inches square, folks. Yeah. Oh, it's so pretty. It's so pretty. So, contrasting fabrics, 4 of them. And if you have a stripe, by all means, look at that. You just have to cut it exactly the same. If you have a fussy cut, do a little bit better job than I did. But I was really pleased with this too. I cut this geometric shape here nice and straight, and so my geometric shapes are nice and straight. Makes sense. So yeah, that's block number 14. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. That is my favorite block. I really think that's delightful. So there you go, block 14. We only have a couple left, and then we're on to constructing our quilts. So I hope you love it, folks. I enjoyed making this. Very, very simple. It really was. It looks like complicated, but it's not. You've learned a new technique, the quarter square triangles. Well, look, your points match up. You do it, and again, press, iron, iron. You can see how beautifully, let's see the back. I love to look at the back. Yeah, look at the back, all of those seams. So as you go along, you're pressing your seams really, really super. So your back looks just nice. And it'll lay a lot, it will lay nice and flat, really. When you go to actually put your quilt together, and you actually go to quilt it, which we're probably just going to be doing in the ditch here somehow along. I don't know how we're going to do this, but it will lay really lovely and flat, and then when you wash it or when you use it, it'll get lovely and crinkly. But in the construction, so important to press. So there, block number 14. Really, really thrilled. Tell me how you love it, folks, or how you got on with it. I'm thrilled. So I'll just leave this up again just for a few seconds to show you the configuration of your blocks.